mean, I think because we're located here in the heart, like literally of Silicon Valley, there's a lot of openness to it overall. And it's more of an efficiency piece. If we run a really small back-end support team, how do we leverage all of our resource to be the most efficient, but also be able to provide that hands-on support to provide a W-2 to a person who doesn't have it? There's a balance, and we need the team to be able to operate really efficiently. And we may not, a lot of tools that like you need to invest in are very expensive.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of research about how to maximize using the workspace in Claude, where it's more gathered information and great tools.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Shift Change podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Moore, and today I'm joined by Olivia Bryant. Olivia is coming to us from Vine Hospitality. And Olivia, I'm super excited to talk through your role at Vine and a little bit about what you do there and how everything, looks from, the operations side of the business. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So, first of all, for anyone listening who may not know who you are, can you give us a little bit about your background, how you ended up in hospitality, and what kind of led you into the role that you're in today?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm with Vine Hospitality and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Vine. I oversee all of our operations as well as most of our supporting functions within the corporate office. We are a Bay Area-based restaurant group of 7 locations throughout the Bay, and we at a fine dining level primarily throughout Marin, the East Bay, and the South Bay down here in San Jose. So I came to be following about slightly over a year ago. My primary background is in HR, actually. I come from an HR and operations mix, but not really in the hospitality space. I come from tech and finance primarily. I've gone through a number of large scale transformations within the organization. And I would say that Vine brought me in initially to lead their people team and then to step into operations because of that lens that I have between the people and operations component. And in a hospitality based industry, nothing's more your people.
Yeah. So, give us a sense of your world today. Like, what falls under your scope, and what does Vine Hospitality actually do? Who are their customers, and who are you serving? Um, just kind of give us a picture of that.
Yeah, so the scope of my role is that, again, I oversee all of the operations. So I have a director of operations that reports into me. All of our general managers and management teams at the restaurant level report into my director of ops. I have a culinary director. I have a director of HR. We have a newly starting director of marketing and events. Those are the 4 functions that report directly into me. Vine Hospitality is, I would say, the corporate office for the 7 locations. So our commercial known brands, and for those in the San Francisco Bay Area, would be Left Bank Brasserie, where we have 3 locations, plus Petite Left Bank, LB Steak, which is 2 locations, and then Meso Mediterranean, which is a single concept restaurant.
Which parts of the business are you closest to?
I think that's an ever-evolving answer. Of course, because my background came from understanding the HR side, that's something that I'm very, very familiar with. Since I've stepped into this role, though, I can say that I have taken kind of a boots on the ground, rolled up my sleeves, stepped in where we had locations that maybe had leadership changes. So I got a crash course in being a practicing GM for a period of time. I am not a master chef, but I am definitely a master eater. So I do enjoy the culinary.
I can relate to that.
So the culinary side, I'm learning a lot. I'm not as familiar again with like a commercial level kitchen and, all the steps that go into it. I would say that, and then I've done my MBAs in marketing and I've done large scale event planning. So I kind of span everything. I would say the one that I'm probably least familiar with in operations is that that core culinary piece. But I would say that my role right now is to build systems and scalable systems. And that is also, but or not also, but the first step of that is really to create a strong, very strong structure at that director level, which has been my
Mhm.
as that level becomes more ingrained in the organization and stabilized, I am turning my lens towards scalable, repeatable structure. So it doesn't matter which concept. You could walk in and cookie cut the process, and the concept is irrelevant. And taking those best practices and turning them into processes that can be utilized at every location and then we can move into, like, the nuances, right? So, really at a place where we're building that structure, and foundation while getting the right organizational structure in place as well. So that's at the restaurant level all the way up through the corporate office.
Let's talk a little bit more about that structure and how the pressure to do that kind of showed up and what the challenges are around creating that structure.
Yeah. Um, so the pressure came from a CEO change. Alistair Levine, who
Okay.
is our CEO, is the son of the founder and stepped in about a year and a half ago. In doing so, he created a vision and he has a vision, and we're building that vision into existence. So the restaurant group grew a lot in the time leading up to Alistair stepping in. And so with that, there's been a need to really evaluate, do we have the right structure in place? Do we have the right processes in place? And I would say, actually, back to kind of what we were talking about before we started recording, are we utilizing our tech stacks, our technology, our platforms? Like, where are we not maximizing agencies where we could incorporate them to have everyone's lives be easier? And so
Yeah.
that structure is driven by those changes.
So what have you found? Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about like what the tech stack is. Is it consistent across all of the different locations? Do different locations require different tech stacks? Um, and how does that challenge show up across the different locations with technology?
So our tech stacks are the same, which
Okay.
I'm very fortunate for because
Yeah.
and that's not necessarily always the case.
Mhm.
And so that is very, very helpful. I would say that because my background, I spent almost a full decade in a data analytics environment in the tech space. It's more about how do we use the platforms to the best of our advantage? Have we evaluated if there's an opportunity to integrate our platforms so they actually serve us better? How do we train and transform and evolve our team members to think about, are they making data informed decisions? There is a little bit, I would say, in the industry, which I'm learning, and that's like, okay, well, are we operating off of a feel? And that kind of operating off of a data pool that we can really draw insights from and apply them to
Yeah.
our everyday business decisions that we're making. And we're kind of in that arc of moving from one phase to the next. And again, not just that we have maybe certain restaurants operating on a more data informed base, but we have all locations, all of our managers are brought in and trained and, developed to look at the business need along those lines.
I want to sit on this for a little bit. I want to hear a little bit more. I want to go a little deeper into because it sounds like you have a real kind of a sophisticated view into this just because of your experience. How do you determine the answers to some of those questions that you're trying to get to figure out what needs to be done?
I think you start first with observation.
Okay.
So that means what are it's almost, I know a lot of groups do guest mapping, right? background lies more in, I would say, like the employee experience rather than the guest experience. So it's that same idea of taking the guest mapping for a restaurant and breaking it down to employee mapping. I come in as a GM or an AGM, and each one is going to be slightly different so that there's clear delegation and responsibility. I come in on day one after an inventory, and what are the decisions I need to make for the next 30 or 45 days before inventory starts again? What does my workflow look like for a given week? And this is such a quick moving industry where, one day you walk in and all of a sudden someone's washing machine is overflowed in an apartment above. Real case scenario, and you have, bubbly water leaking into above in your ceiling, right? And you're working to pedal through that. So how do we create a nice balance of this is how your workflow needs to look for that given week, but it allows for the guest recovery. It allows for the disruption of service. It allows for things that can go wrong and need your immediate attention. So the show can go on more or less, right? And so really like understanding, observing, sensing what that looks like, what are the priorities, what are the nice to haves, and mapping it out. Just
Mhm.
take a big piece of paper, write them down. And that way you begin to understand the trade offs, right? Everybody in their workplace and in their lives, but in their workplace makes trade offs. And so I choose today to work on a slide deck. I'm going to exchange maybe in-person meetings or whatever, right? Like we all make those. And so what are the trade-offs at the restaurant level that our teams need to make? And so if we can get more efficient with our technology, so there's less trade-off time, and instead there's enough insights being provided through platforms, through reporting, through the use of AI, then
Mhm.
have a more balanced team that is happy and doesn't feel overwhelmed. They don't feel, in a position where the trade-offs are like costing too much, I guess is what I.
Yeah. Talk me through the technology that the team or that is used. What is the tech stack?
So we work in Google Workspace as our email, and we work in Asana as our project management. This has been a new adoption in the last year, so that's been fun to go through. We work in Craftable, Ingest, Margin-Edge, Toast, Spot On, Paylocity.
Mm.
I think that those are the ones that come to mind off the top of my head, but I imagine there's a couple more.
So as you're thinking through the structure and how to kind of improve and streamline the workflows and make them consistent across the entire portfolio, what are you having to consider? I mean, because those are a lot of different point systems, point solutions within, the practice of running these locations. What are you having to think through? How do you make sure that all of the structure that you're putting in place fits into all of those different systems without breaking something or creating super disruption within the regular day-to-day operations.
Well, it's funny you mention that because we're on the brink of revamping our Toast platform, which I don't think
Really?
we are the first, nor will we be the last of Toast needing a full overhaul.
Yeah.
These scalable implementations, for instance, that Toast um, takes an absolute 100% cross collaborative effort. You must loop in all of the stakeholders. I'll give an example. It sounds so simple now, but it was like a domino fell. So, have had the preliminary conversations with our consultant who will be stepping in to help and lead the process. Brought in, of course, our director of operations, and then started to bring in our culinary director, right? Because it all is meal pacing and just so many layers to how are we going to design this to really have it make sense? And of course, multiple concepts, and yet we do have specials at each concept, like there's one or within each brand, I should say. So having a side conversation with our events team who handles our private dining and talking about our, menus. And just all of a sudden, it was very clear that it was like, ah, okay, so we need to have everybody in this conversation because we're now pushing over a domino that the domino is going to trigger a cascading effect. And we need to
Mhm.
be there at the inception of that domino fall.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to make decisions in vacuums and silos, and those decisions are not going to flow through to the other teams who are, depending on the outcomes, whether it be through proper GL mapping, proper taxation on our private dining, like anything you can think of, it just won't be considered because in my role, I don't have the foresight into every nuanced piece that needs to be addressed. I have a
Yeah.
who helps me think it through and bring their expertise based off of their perspective back to the table. And then I overall overarching needs and make decisions from there to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the Toast project is that it actually initiated from an HR conversation. So that interconnectedness, it's very easy to think, well, I'm in the restaurant, and so my world is this, and you're in corporate, so your world is that. Okay, well, I'm in corporate, but I'm on this team, and my world is that, right? And not see the flow through between all of the functions. So funny that it started from HR. Who would have guessed that our Toast revamp would have initiated as an HR project?
How do you prioritize what areas of the business get attention first?
That's a great question. I would say that it's a little bit like a filing cabinet. And in my role, I start taking into consideration again, that observation, hearing the feedback, what are the needs, and begin to file them sort of in a flow that makes much as I need to lay out what a workflow is for our restaurant teams, I need to have a flow myself. So it's creating that process of, are we dealing with a process at the inception point? Or are we dealing with a problem that just is living further down the track and we can correct the problem and the inception doesn't need to be addressed? And so actually back to the toast example, that was we started with a problem on the track that we address, create role alignment and clarify GL mapping so that our Paylocity integration would work with our time and labor and our Toast POS, right? And so they're all talking to each other. That makes a lift of manual labor. Okay, so that's a problem on the track, 3/4 of a mile down. And as I began to like walk through the tracks and look at each railroad tie, it was like, okay, well, that's not broken if I go backwards, and that's not broken. Or in this case, it was like, ooh, that's kind of broken. That's broken. And suddenly I'm back a mile and a half. And I'm like, we're broken at the inception line. We're not broken, at the mile and a half mark like I thought we
Yeah.
were. You have to go slow to go fast. And that has been an
Mhm.
in this industry because it's not an industry that operates on a very slow, go fast
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
So slowing down is to look at the big picture will help.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the just kind of the workforce and the culture within the operation as a whole. I would love to know if, in your area within your portfolio, if labor is a challenge. I'm starting to see as I'm talking to different leaders in hospitality, whether that's hotel or restaurant, that, there are some geographical areas where labor is, you know, is a challenge. And then there are others where it's not. And so I'm curious, how you see that and then how you think about staffing, training, and retention of your labor workforce.
It's such a big question. So labor in the sense of a talent pool to draw from. We do have talent. We are located in the Bay Area, and so we are. I would say one of our biggest issues is cost of living. I guess
Hmm.
the restaurants, as everyone knows, tend to run on really thin margins, right?
Yeah.
And so really evaluating our compensation model. And by compensation, I mean total rewards, total compensation. And this has been a process we've been on for the past year since I stepped into the group. And the evaluation is in process. We continue to go through layers of the organization, but ultimately, the idea is that we have landed on a strategy that is rich for our employees. It attracts them not just because of the hourly or salary rate that we're offering, but it actually provides more of an experience, other benefits, and that the whole view is taken into consideration. And I say that because again, in the Bay Area, cost of living and wages are tend to be very high here.
Mhm.
I don't know if where our audience will be based, but I was just looking at benchmarking data for a dishwasher in the general area, and rates go up as high as $28 an hour.
Wow, that is surprising.
Let our audience take a pause there for a minute.
Yeah.
So we have to look at it from all perspectives of what we're offering, our team members, promotion paths, absolutely, hourly and salary wages, insurance, um, bereavement, parking. I mean, just the whole picture of what we may or choose to offer our team members that offer them a desire to come and work with us versus working at the shop up the street.
Yeah. So is culture a part of that? Is there a specific culture that, that your locations or that, your organization offers that's compelling? Or is it more about the pay and the benefits package?
There is definitely a culture piece, and we have a number of long tenured employees who work within our group. And by
Really?
tenured, I mean easily 2, 3 years, up to 17, 18 years. I mean, uh,
Okay.
I would say that there is absolutely a culture piece tied to it. And that culture piece stems back to, I would say, almost inception with Alistair's father, who opened the first location in Marin, and that family run business that grew over time. I think we are part of the piece is we're working to like capture what is that and put it into words, be able to identify it. And that's kind of an art in its own right to develop that culture. But really, really working with our general managers as they have come in to create the culture so that in each individual location, there's an opportunity to build the culture, kind of live by the values, you know,
Hmm.
and cement that into our new hires. You mentioned a few questions ago or earlier in this question about trading and all that we're talking about is the Vine way, right? So, how do we as a company look at each of these pieces and implement them into our team members so they can be champions of the culture? But they need to understand it first, and all the way back to the tech stack. They first have a good handle on how to use the systems before they can utilize
Hmm.
them to the max.
Sure.
They have to understand what promotion opportunities, what's our salary leveling and benchmarking practice, promotion practice in order to be able to work with their teams to identify top performers and build a performance-based culture. We have, so all of those pieces need to be trained. And I would say we are building that training base now. It
Yeah.
or a scalable perspective, right? So that as we promote within, as we hire externally, everyone comes in with the deeper understanding and are able to adopt into our culture.
How do you manage culture across different concepts? How does that show up at each restaurant? And do you think of culture from um, like an organizational perspective, or does it bubble down, I guess, instead of up, into the actual location and into that concept at that particular restaurant?
Right now, because we're looking at developing scalable systems, I am looking at culture from a corporate wide or not corporate,
Yeah.
organizational wide
Yeah.
level. That's how you build the foundation. The nuances, are there nuances in place between the concepts? Absolutely. I mean, it's already in
Hmm.
existence, so that's not really the major focus right now, but building consistency across the brands, across the organization is kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's kind of loop back into the technology piece of things just from kind of I'm thinking about this with regard to your workforce. Is how do you plan to um, communicate and to implement any kind of structure that you've talked about with technology and the actual execution behind all of that? How would you describe how you would implement that structure with your workforce to handle the adoption of any structural change? How does that work with the workforce? That is kind of the perception that I have, is that your workforce, they've got their marching orders, they come in every day, they do their thing. It's very regimented, it's very consistent, and any kind of disruption to that can create friction. I'm curious how you handle that or how you plan to handle that.
Let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
But from a change management process, you're looking for force multipliers, change champions who are advocates. You have to build that pool. It can be, and I, in my experience, don't just look at your top leaders to be those change champions. You are really looking for advocates within the business, individuals who have influence and can leverage that influence, but oftentimes they may just be a strong or tenured employee who's in the back of the house or who's a server. Don't just limit it to what you think might be your general manager, because oftentimes they have a lot on their plate already. Identify those individuals and bring them in as advocates. So let them be a part of designing what the change is, or at least have a voice. Now, again, perspective from their position. They're going to have real time examples that I can't possibly have in my role. So I do need to hear from those individuals and understand if I knock the domino over, what else is going to follow. And that partnership is back to inception is very important and identify and at least inviting. Not everybody has the bandwidth in their life. So the invitation though also is a symbol of respecting, maybe their tenure or their performance, or you're identifying high potential performers and you're bringing that back to them. So the invitations are very important. There's a project we're going to be embarking on. Pushing change from the top down. Sometimes it's necessary. We launched
Yeah.
Paylocity. I joined in March. Our first Paylocity payroll was live in June. It was very intense. We went through the entire change management process. We were not looking for advocates to help change our HRIS system. We just
Yeah.
changed our HRS, but that's different. That's a platform. Talking really change management and change adoption from a culture or organization or policy standpoint that is going to impact your everyday workforce. You're looking for those advocates and bring them in to the fold about the decision. What do they see? What do they anticipate? What are your blind spots? And can they talk it through? And with that, they get to be part of the design of the new. And that's incredibly powerful because it's not corporate pushing down a decision or management or ownership or whoever. It's coming from within the organization and like a heartbeat begins to move outward. And that is very powerful, and necessary to make some of the bigger changes that we need. Like Paylocity, for instance, while that was an absolute just platform change, we still found people who adopted to it quickly, who understood it quickly, who could help bring that change to partner, say, other managers, for questions. We went boots on the ground in the restaurants with different like mini onboarding sessions, helping them set up their apps, right? Getting all of these. And it revealed blind spots that I hadn't anticipated because I was very new to the industry,
Hmm.
that some people don't have smartphones. Some people only have flip phones. Some people don't even have phones, it turns out. Some people don't have email addresses. Like, all these nuanced things that if we had had a little bit more time, I may have figured out in advance, but we were able to to problem solve on the spot. And now we've gone through a year of kind of evolving to
Mhm.
everybody has access. And some of these pieces will never be solved. People who don't have emails in 2026, they're never going to have an email. So
Right.
they need a copy of their W-2. We will always, we will always get it to them by
Gosh,
hand.
that's wild. Yeah, you would just never think you would run into that kind of problem.
It's the nature of the business
Yeah.
and the workforce that we have here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So, some of that you're never going to be able to resolve, but the more you can find those change champions, those advocates to partner with you, the more successful the change is going to be. But
Yeah.
it does force you to slow down because you can't do that and move so fast. You have
Mhm.
at least in stages and
Yeah.
take in the information.
We talked a little bit earlier about your tech stack and just the number of systems, just the volume of systems and platforms that you have to leverage. Do you feel like would you describe your tech environment as modern, or do you feel like it's still kind of disconnected, siloed across the different systems that maybe should be connected?
I mean, coming from a tech background, I have a richer tech stack here than I did in the tech companies working in the heart of the Silicon Valley. Because,
Really?
yeah, I mean, honestly. So
That's interesting.
this was this was what I walked into. And this is what I mean, this was already in place before Alistair stepped back in. So we're working in the ecosystem that we have.
Hmm.
I think it goes to the piece where I've learned the most, which is on the culinary side, participating in the tastings, working with the chefs, understanding, learning a lot from our Alistair and our culinary director, which is understanding the analogy on the plate is less is more. And so not necessarily adding the last toss of this and dribble of that
Yeah.
and getting to a level of simple, grace maybe on the plate,
Hmm.
really bring forward all the flavors and the essence of the plate. And I think that that's a great analogy for the tech stack. As you're
It is.
advancing platforms, less is more. What integrates, and which systems can leverage data from others, even if there's a rich tech stack on the back end because the industry hasn't caught up with maybe holistic platforms that can be used.
Mhm.
But that the integrations on the back end, oftentimes the team members don't need to see all of that. You operate that. And so how can you integrate? And starting, it all goes back to inception. Who evaluated if the platforms could potentially integrate and take a lift
Mhm.
your team? Have you done that evaluation? As I mentioned, our Toast revamp came from a need to integrate with Paylocity, which came from a need to integrate with our wage and labor platform. So once we get that integration, which opened up obviously this huge project, but once we get that integration, that's manual labor that's gonna be lifted off of our finance team, our
Yeah.
HR team, our ops team, right? And it will all smooth out some of the wrinkles we have on our back end for our tech space.
What do you think still requires more manual coordination than it should?
I would say right now at this very moment, top of mind would be, do you mean tech space or do you just mean in the industry in general?
Just yeah, I guess in the tech space. I mean, I'm thinking, with all of these systems and the, potential integrations and, making sure that there's a platform or a solution for everything. Is there anything that's still kind of outside of that and is just manually coordinated and there's no system for it?
I mean
Or are people still like working on spreadsheets or writing things down when they should be inputting it into a system?
yes.
Yeah.
I would say that that is where AI probably starts to enter the space.
Mhm.
Have we considered, and I would say more and more we are as a company, have we considered how to utilize, AI platforms that can, since we have so many platforms that can connect the dots. So you're not the one looking open table and then toast and then, right?
Yeah.
You're relying on an AI tool that's able to bridge that for you without implementing a whole new platform They are able to connect the dots, spit out the data analytics, and give you information back. We are definitely dabbling in that, but we have not did or determined that there's a best way for us to use it. It's mostly just, I think, learning from like our side on the corporate side where we're more at our laptops and we're utilizing more to kind of
Mhm.
what might be the right mix that we could implement out for our teams. Because, of course, we don't want it to become well, I use this and I use that, right? We
Yeah.
want a
You need
singular,
some standardization, yeah.
but we haven't, while we're dabbling in it, we haven't said, oh, yeah, this is the route we're going to help synthesize all this information.
What is the overall sentiment about AI within corporate and then, within I don't know if, like, thinking through how your workforce thinks about AI, but definitely from a corporate perspective, what is the sentiment there?
I mean, I think because we're located here in the heart, like literally of Silicon Valley, there's a lot of openness to it overall. And it's more of an efficiency piece. If we run a really small back end support team, how do we leverage all of our resource to be the most efficient, but also be able to provide that hands-on support to provide a W-2 to a person who doesn't have a
Mhm.
like, there's a balance, and we need the team to be able to operate really efficiently, and we may not a lot of tools that, like, you need to invest in are very expensive.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of research about how to maximize using the workspace in Claude where it's more gathered information and
Mhm.
great tools for the G&A functions, finance, HR, even marketing that you can pull out of Claude that um, takes large scales of information and gives you that benchmarking, gives you those norms, whereas you may have to go out to another vendor and pay 15, 20, $25,000 to get that same information.
Mhm.
You can now leverage it through some of the platforms through AI. And that's a
Yeah.
game changer for us as we've been navigating our compensation strategy, our social media statistics, just all these pieces.
Yeah.
You need the information to help benchmark what's in the normal range or what's
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you could snap your fingers and fix just one operational bottleneck or workflow under the umbrella of your responsibilities, what would that be?
I think for right now, because we're going through a pretty big process, we are really training our managers on like performance management process,
Mhm.
which includes everything from the great news of you got a raise and you're a top performer
Yeah.
to the harder news. That right now is just where we're at. And if I could snap my fingers and say everyone has been trained fully under program is able to implement it out into their restaurants, have all the tools at their fingertips, that would be a big, big weight right
What do
now.
you think that would unlock for the company?
I mean, I think that it would unlock a deeper sense of purpose.
Mhm.
I come here because, and I'm not saying that our people don't feel valued, but there's something to, a lot of people fear feedback. A lot of people
Yeah.
difficult conversations. And yet, what oftentimes comes out of the feedback, what comes out of those conversations and insights about where I'm sitting on the scope of what's being expected of me, is
Mhm.
understanding and a sense of pride,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like that is easily one of the most overlooked pieces, especially in the restaurant industry where you are working and moving so fast. And the concept is that maybe you're giving the feedback is coming to your team through their tips, right? They get immediate feedback.
Yeah.
They gave great service, they get a generous tip. They gave terrible service, they don't get a great tip. But there's nothing like hearing it from the people who have chosen to bring you back into the environment every day. And
Mhm.
that pride that comes with, again, I know not just what the guests are giving me in terms of feedback, but what the actual team is telling me. And that gives me a greater sense of pride when I show up every day.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't know that the restaurant industry has grown up with this mindset. So
Yeah.
it's a big training lift from kind of an old culture in the industry. A lot of what we're talking about is legacy culture in the industry
Yeah.
to a new way of operating within the industry that is bigger than just our group. It's restaurant in a whole.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap up, I like to do a quick lightning round. So, first thing that comes to mind, technology and hospitality right now, genuinely helping or adding mostly just complexity?
I would say the majority is adding complexity.
Okay. Most underrated role in your organization or in your operation?
I think the most underrated role in the entire restaurant industry is your dishwasher.
Okay. I think I've heard that one before too. So that tracks. One tool or system your team could not live without.
And one tool or system we could not live without, I mean, would definitely be toast and all its complexity that it adds.
Yes. All right. And then final question. What would you be doing if you were not in the restaurant industry?
Well, I went through that. I'd probably be consulting. I took a bit of a break. I mean, as an HR leader, I took a break after my last company. I consulted. I launched my own podcast. I kind of reflected on if I still like people or not, and I came to the conclusion that I did. And so I re-entered the workforce into the corporate world, into this role. If I truly didn't need a job, you mean like I won the lottery, what would I be doing on
Sure.
myself?
I mean, either one. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw this
But I'd love to hear.
I saw this great Instagram reel of these women who are learning. They, are I love horses, and they're horse
Same.
riders, and they're learning to basically do the brave thing where she runs with the bow and arrow, and they're running through the forest, and they're learning to do archery while riding the horse.
That's amazing.
Bucket list, bucket list
Hey,
right there.
right there with you. Right there with you on that one. That's
I'm becoming,
amazing.
I'm becoming brave.
I love that. Well, Olivia, this has been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for your being generous with your time today. I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy. So before we wrap up, where can people find you or connect with you?
Well, vinehospitality.com is, obviously the website on LinkedIn. And you can also look me up on my own website, which is still listed under the culture chat.
Well,
So
thank you so much.
thank you so much, Kelly. I really enjoyed
All
you.
right. Thanks everybody for listening. See you next time.